My 18th birthday was 10 days before Pearl Harbor. And I was in high school. I was a senior at the time. And 3 other guys I used to bum around with, we all decided we wanted to join the Air Force. So we waited till we got out of high school, which was in May. And so the 4 of us went down to UC to sign up. And I was the only one who was old enough. The other 2 were still 17. So I signed up. I didn't report for duty until later on. I forget what the month was, but I had to report up at Columbus. And I always wanted to be a pilot, so when I signed up, I told everybody I want to go to training for be a pilot. I get up to Columbus, and all they did is run some tests on us and everything, and I was slightly deaf in my left ear. They told me they couldn't take me as pilot because of this slight problem. Well, anyhow, the event put me on a train, sent me to Nashville, where I went through training, ups and downs and all this kind of stuff. And I took some tests. And when I took all the tests, they wanted to know what I wanted to go through. They gave me like 4 different choices. And I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to go to. But he said, well, you don't have a problem. He said, you did so well. You have 3 choices you can choose from. You can choose for mechanics, which is maintenance. You can choose for radio operator, or choose for armament. So I chose maintenance. And they sent me to Mobile, Alabama, to go through B-29 school as a mechanic. I can't remember exactly when I graduated, but they were asking for, if anybody wanted to volunteer to be a gunner, flight gunner. So I volunteered. We graduated from gunnery school, and they sent us to Boise, Idaho, where we were put on a crew. And that was really the first time I ever got to see a B-24. I'd never flown in one at all, and I was there early, so I asked if there's a chance to get a ride in one. And they said, well, we got a night flight tonight. He said, we're going to be out 4 hours. Well, we had no place to do it. We weren't assigned anything, so I went on. It was the first time I flew in one. So that was my introduction to the B-24. From there, we went to Casper, Wyoming, which was the first time I met the crew. We were all put on a crew in Boise, but we got to Casper. We did our flight training. I was put in the ball turret at that point. I was underneath the airplane. We had 10-man crew. And it was really a shock. The ball turret on a B-24 is mounted up in the bottom of the fuselage, and it's too big to leave out because the fuselage is so close to the ground. We have to pull the turret up in, and when we get in the air, we have to put it out. And then when we're done with it, we have to pull it back up in the airplane because the airplane sits so close to the ground. It was really a shock. I get in this turret, and we have to point it straight down to get in it and pull the thing up and latch the door. And then it has 2 handles on it. And the handles work like this to turn it and like this to make it go up and down. And the window is about that big right in front of you, and your feet are on each side of the window. You're sitting. You're laying, really. You're not sitting like this. You're almost laying on your back. Well, anyhow, the thing's pointed straight down. And I get in it. I have to rotate it level. I go like this. My heart almost stopped. It's like falling out of the sky. You know, you can't see anything out of the B-24. You can't see the airplane or nothing. I mean, out of the turret. It's mounted so low that you can see forward and you see sideways and so forth. But boy, my heart almost stopped. But after a while, you get used to that. It wasn't so bad. We took off one night, and we flew all night. And the next morning, we're landing in just north of Ireland. It's one of the capital cities. And then they put us on a boat and took us over to England. All the bases were numbered, and I don't remember what the number was right now. But that's when we trained as a crew. We went out and did formation flying, but we flew to the outfit we're in, which is completely new with all low altitude stuff. We didn't go to altitude at all. We checked in on the base, and the commanding officer got us all together, and he said that we're a super secret outfit, and if they see us talking to anybody that they don't recognize on the base, we are subject to being shot. And when you're a kid, that goes deep. So we didn't really go off the base hardly at all. Some of the guys, mechanics and aircraft, stuff like that, they had bicycles and everything. They could go off the base. But we were pretty much restricted to the base. We could only go as far as we could walk, which generally we didn't. We slept during the daytime most of the time, so we walked back and forth to the mess hall, stuff like that. But very rarely did we go in town. One thing, we had a lot of special equipment. All of the regular equipment was taken off. We only had 4 guns on the airplane. Top turret, what the flight engineer had, was 2, and I was a tail gunner. I had 2. Those the only guns on the airplane. The airplane originally had a ball turret on it, which was removed, and that ball turret became a hole in the floor. They called it the Joe hole. They put a lid over it, and we carried people once in a while. We'd drop at night, and that's where they exited the airplane. They had parachutes on and everything. They went through the Joe hole to get out. It was also different to us, but the thing was that all of our work from that point on, unless we were just building some time in the airplane, was done at night. We took off at night. Sometimes we'd land in the daylight. If we come back maybe late enough where we just get daylight before we get back to base, but mostly it was nighttime out and nighttime back. The missions were very interesting in that here, being a tail gunner, I never got to see where we were, but I got to see some beautiful country. And the thing was, during the war, there were no lighted areas on the surface in France. No lights at all. And the Churchill started a thing with V. And so V is dit, dit, da in Morse code. And the French would flash a V from the ground, like maybe a house, open a window shade or something, or a door. V, you see a V here. But if they got caught doing that, they were executed. I mean, it was really a bad deal. So it was a whole different world than we're used to. One of the missions we had one night, beautiful clear night, we're making the approach down very low, and we dropped what we had to drop. And all of a sudden I saw a truck pulling behind our airplane, and people jumped off and they started unloading or picking the stuff up. As we went farther forward, I saw a whole line of trucks parked off to our one side. And I found out that that night, I forget the British, I think the British had, I don't know, like 22 airplanes that made a drop, and we had 8 that made a drop that same night. So it's the biggest drop I ever saw. Maybe it's the biggest one we ever made, I don't know. But it's the only time I've ever seen another airplane in the area. But everybody had a time frame to be there. If they couldn't be there within a specific couple minutes, they don't go. They just pull off and go home. So they had enough spacing where the guy could make his drop and get up and get started before the next one started his run. When we first were assigned missions, we were assigned 25 missions and we go home. D-Day was our 23rd mission, so we got 2 more to go. D-Day caused them to give us 5 more missions. So we figured, well, we may have another mission or 2 since we're almost there to begin with. Our flights were so close together, we put all 5 of them in. So we ended up 30 missions rather than 25 missions. So it's sort of a kick in the head, you know. We're done and we found out we're not done. And the next thing they did with us, the enlisted, they put us on assignment to a base of something we were knowledgeable in. So we're all knowledgeable as gunners, for one thing. So they sent me to gunnery school to be a gunnery instructor. So we didn't go back for the second tour. And I think the reason for that was that after the invasion, they had many more ways of getting equipment in than flying in B-24s. So our outfit almost died completely. I think that's why we didn't go back. As the war was slowing down, I was based down in Texas at that time, and I was working on a B-25. I was a flight crewman on a B-25, and I was in the shop one day working over the manuals, and our chief mechanic, said, "What are you going to do now that the war's over?" And I said, "Well, I hadn't really." He said, "You have a place to go to work?" I said, "No, not really." He said, "Well," he said, "take my advice if you will." He said, "I was in the service before the war. I didn't like how I got out. And it was worse, so I went back into it before the war." So he went out of the service and back in twice before the war broke. He said, "So I suggest just say for one extra hitch." He said, "Everybody's going to be looking for a job, and it's going to really be rough." So that sounded good to me. So that's what I did. I re-enlisted right there on the spot. And I'm glad I did, because it was pathetic after the war. I know a lot of guys that just had a hard time finding something to eat even, you know, just. Then they sent me to Japan, and I decided, well, I think I'll re-enlist again. So I re-enlisted again. So I ended up actually having 13 years in the service.